What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. I came across this clip from the Next Level Soul podcast last night, and I thought it was pretty interesting, especially because I've made a couple videos about this concept of hell. The videos, if you haven't seen them, I can summarize them pretty quickly. The main thesis is this. Ever since I was a kid and I even learned about this concept of heaven or hell and this idea of like there's this bifurcation, this dichotomy that like you either are going to pass the test and go into heaven or you're going to fail and go into eternal torment. It never made sense to me because that type of a punishment for a finite life, let's say if we exclude the idea of reincarnation, because I think most mainstream religions kind of center around this idea of one life, which I don't agree with based on many near-death experiences. I do think probably we are entering and re-entering this life many times to learn different lessons, etc. So, but anyways, this idea, it all comes around this idea. If you get one life, one try, you just get whatever the roll of the dice is, however you come out, you got to do your best wherever you're born, whatever you're exposed to growing up, you have to choose the right religion and make all these steps happen. And then if you fail in 70 years and 80 years, whatever it is, which is nothing in comparison to the scope of eternity, your future of eternity will be dictated by this very brief test. And that type of punishment for something along those lines, people might say, well, hey, that's the test. You got to pass it. Listen, I think a lot of people can't wrap their minds around the idea of infinity or eternity. I don't even think our human minds or physical bodies are capable of understanding what that means. That is forever. That seems bananas. That seems bizarre. That seems beyond illogical. That seems impossible. And so that's the gist of the video, the couple videos that I've made in regards to this concept. Now, where did this concept even come from? I believe the Christian religion is probably one of the major religions that talks about the concept of hell. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's also discussed in other religions. I'm pretty sure it's discussed in other religions, but I think that the concept of hell is definitely a part of Christianity and Christian teachings. So I found it very interesting that this gentleman came on the Next Level Soul podcast and actually, for folks who are clinging to the idea of hell being a logical idea and a reasonable punishment or a real punishment, let's put it like that, whether it's reasonable or not, as a real punishment, I thought this was very interesting because this guy, he's a former preacher and he comes out, he's actually done research into the writings of the Bible. And he has come to the conclusion, and I haven't researched this myself, but I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was food for thought that I wanted to share with everybody. He has come to the conclusion that where hell actually appears in the Bible, it's actually a mistranslation. This really blew my mind, and this makes a lot of sense. He goes back to the original Greek writing, which if you guys don't know, the New Testament was actually written in Greek, and then it was translated, and now we have the current version in English. But he goes back to the original writings and he realizes that hell is a mistranslation of an actual physical place, a place where they used to burn garbage, hence the fire. And so the whole thing makes so much more sense when you look at the way that he describes what's written in the Bible, and that this whole thing has been misinterpreted and misconstrued, probably by design, because hell as a concept can be used as a control mechanism. And, I think ultimately that's really all it is, a fear mechanism, a control mechanism to get people to fall in line, to get people to buy into a particular religion or things like that. So I don't think it has any place in reality whatsoever, but super cool to hear what this guy has to say. And if this is a concept, if this is an idea that is causing you concern or keeping you up at night, I think you got to watch this clip. Check this out.
Jesus was the great theologian of hell. Jesus talked about hell more than anyone else in the Bible. And I'm like, is that true? So I look up the original Greek words that are being used. And to my shock, there's this egregious, horrible mistranslation of the word hell as it appears in like the King James. The word that Jesus used in every single reference was the word Gehenna, which is the Valley of Hinnom, which was like the city garbage dump of the day,
right?
Where not only garbage would be thrown, but dead bodies of criminals and thieves would be thrown. Gehenna was the only place that lepers were allowed to
roam free,
conflagrate together. Yeah, they weren't allowed to go into the city, right? So Jesus is saying, this is one of Jesus's great gospel teachings. Actually, is heaven whole or hell maimed, as you could call it that. Jesus says, hey, if you're sinning It's way better to just chop off the arm that's causing the sin and enter the kingdom of heaven maimed than to continue in sin and enter into hell with both arms intact. And when he says hell, he said the word Gehenna. Better to cut off your arm than to be thrown into the fires of Gehenna,
which were on fire. It was almost a garbage.
Yes,
so they did
literally
set it on fire. Literally fired up. Yeah.
And then here's the kicker. This is amazing, dude. He says, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, look, he's clearly describing an underworld where people get tortured and stuff. But when you look at the passage he's quoting from a passage in Isaiah. I want to say it's Isaiah 45, or it might be the very last chapter of Isaiah. But it's this amazing passage where the Israelites had been sacrificing their children into the fires of Gehenna to the false god Molech, which I'm sure you're familiar with that name, right?
Right.
And God check this out. This is incredible. God told the Jews in Isaiah that sacrificing your children in fire is an abomination to me. And it says, I did not conceive of this, nor would it ever enter into my mind to command you to do this. Burning your children in fire. And he says, because you've committed this abomination, you shall be thrown into the fires of Gehenna, something like that, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. So in this prophecy from Isaiah, he's telling the Jews, because you've committed, in my eyes, the ultimate abomination, which is to burn your children in fire. Are you catching any references here? I will throw you into the fire, or you shall be thrown into the fire. And the reference of where the worm does not die and the fire's not quenched is like an idiom or a metaphor for your destruction here will be remembered forever, right? The Old Testament writing especially, and New Testament, but ancient times, they were very metaphorical, right? In the way that they describe things. They were always using pictures and metaphors to draw these allusions to things. And so God is basically saying, like, obviously a worm can't eat you forever. It's going to run out of body to eat at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Fire can't burn you forever. It's going to burn up your body at some point. So it's a metaphor that in the eyes of the rest of the history, it's as if you're always being eaten by worms and burned in the fire, because that's what's going to happen to you here. And the Jews will always remember you as those wicked beings who sacrificed their children in the fire. You know, he's pronouncing this great judgment on those who burned their kids in fire. And so Christians use that exact passage that Jesus quoted, where the worm does not die and the fire's not quenched, to say that Jesus is teaching that God burns his children in fire. Isn't that incredible? And it's the exact opposite. The passage he quotes, God is condemning the Jews for burning their kids in the fire.
And they just switched it around a little bit.
And that's why they say Jesus taught about hell.
It's so crazy to me when you listen to this. Like I'm just blown away, because none of this stuff really resonates with me, I guess, the way that it would with traditional Christians that are like digging into this ancient text that's been kind of like pieced together from all these different translations, and then like harping on these words so carefully and like extrapolating from that one sentence, which seems to, or these words, which are mistranslations from the get-go, at least according to this guy, and then constructing this whole idea of an eternal, like, where's the word eternal, right? It's just sort of like interpretation, and then constructing this whole place, a realm of eternal torment, and then they're teaching it as if it's fact. Like, I don't know, it blows my mind. So like, and it's like, you're using logic right there to try and interpret and understand what this is. Oh, this is an actual place with eternal fire and brimstone. You're going to burn forever. Like, there is some logic being employed there. Like, why can't people in the same effort employ their logic and say, like, wait, does this just make sense? Let me step back. Like, does this actually make sense to say that this would actually happen based on a finite, like based on all these other things? And also, it's like the place is not being described in great detail. It's like they didn't lay it out. These are little metaphors that they're interpreting and spinning. Like, I don't know. It's just very bizarre to me that it even caught on and people are still afraid of it or buying into it, as opposed to the much more logical explanation of, yeah, they kind of warped it and they fooled people, and then this is now being used as a great control mechanism to keep people in line or keep people tethered to the faith. Because, of course, also too, I think it's often said, like, if you don't buy into the faith, that's your destiny more than anything. I think, like, again, I'm not an expert in Christianity, so please correct me if I'm making a incorrect statement here, but my general understanding is, like, in Christianity, as long as at some point you accept this one faith, like, all is forgiven, all is good. And so like to me, that's just getting more people to buy into this one particular faith and these teachings that are coming down from the Vatican or the church or whatever. So it's just more just like, hey, this is a carrot and this is the big stick, so you better stay in line, right? Anyways, I thought this was super fascinating, and I wanted to share it once again for those folks that have been traumatized by this concept, that are feeling like, hey, maybe it's real. Just I thought this was really cool. Take it for food for thought. Take my logical argument for additional food for thought, but there it is. Yeah, I don't buy it. Never did buy it. Not even when I was a kid. Got maybe like a little bit scared when I first heard about the concept, and then I thought about it for a bit. And even as a young kid, I thought this is absolutely just totally. It just does not make sense just from a mathematical perspective. Infinite punishment for a finite period of time, and if you assume just one life, like that seems bonkers. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.